Forward deployed engineer, it's probably a term that a lot of you have heard over the past couple of years. In 2025 itself, there was around a 800% hike in demand for this role. Big companies starting from, the AI pioneers, OpenAI, Claude, Google, going all the way up to the service-based companies in India, such as LTI Mindtree, Cognizant. All of these companies are looking for their next forward deployed engineer. So today we're going to talk with Jasleen Singh, who's currently a forward deployed engineer at Google Cloud. She has around a decade of experience. She was in Dell before this. And forward de-
Definitely. So, why do we need forward deployed engineers today? What does that actually mean? This is a burning question. So, we started a couple of years ago, we're trying to figure out what's AI. Why do we need AI? What's this new type in technology that everyone's talking about? It took us a few years to get to a point where we all started seeing what AI is. How does it help us? How can it help our companies? How can it help us personally? But then, how do you generate ROI from generative AI is still the biggest question. We are at a time where we all understand that Gen AI is the new big thing. ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, we all are using these in our daily lives. But companies have figured out that this is important, this is going to help us, but they're not sure how to generate revenue or ROI out of this. And right now, it's not just a single LLM or a single model, it's the entire ecosystem around it that exists. So, what forward deployed engineers do, they help companies figure out how to create all of that harness around their AI use case and how can they deploy it in their environment so that they can actually make ROI and turn this AI into revenue for them.
okay, that's pretty good to hear.
So it's like bridging a gap between the technology and the solution.
um, Palantir was probably the first company that brought this role, and that was
Yes.
way back in the 2000s, I think mid 2000s,
Mhm.
where I think that they basically had this spy project where they tried to deliver a project because for Palantir they mostly have defensive projects or projects related to spy agencies. So no one really knows what spy agencies actually do. So they tried to deliver a product, but what they understood is it does not meet the client's expectations at all. So what they decided to do is, embed that engineer within their ecosystem. So the engineer can actually sit there, understand their requirements, and, change their product or modify their product according to the needs of the end user. Okay, so Jasleen, I'd like to start off with your initial journey. So, how are things after you graduated from college? That was way back in around 2013 in India. And what was the journey like after you graduated? And when did you think about, going abroad for your master's?
So when I graduated in 2013, it had a pretty non-happening graduation. It was a journey that not just me, but I think thousands of students in India go through. You get an admission, you finish your undergrads, you get a job, and you think that that's your achievement. Well, it kind of is, but that's the beginning of your journey. That's when you try to figure out if this is the right path for you, and if not, then how do you create a path for yourself? The path is not the engineering. The path is once you finish your graduation or your undergrads, what do you do after that? So I got a placement on campus. So just started working with NXP Semiconductors. It used to be Freescale Semiconductors at that time, 2013. It was a big company. Um, I was so excited to start working there. But when I joined, I figured out that maybe a very big company so early in my career was not the right option for me. And it can be different for everyone. I came out with super high expectations and full of energy, wanting to change the world. And moving into a big corporate, things move slowly because there is a process for everything. And there's a reason that they're big in the industry because they have all process and everything in the right place. But that's not what I expected going out. So I worked there for about a year. And I decided that's when I figured out what's going to be my path, what's going to be direction that I want to take. And I pivoted to working with a startup. It was a very initial small startup, but that gave me it was more like an eye-opening experience for me. I got to work in the entire end-to-end life cycle of how you create and develop a product. That involved talking to the customers, understanding what they want, coming back to the company, working with engineers, developing things, testing things, trying to get some funding, trying to get money, working on the finances, building data sheets, delivering the product, the customer not liking it, going back, making proofs. So it was like I got to work on the end to end experience of how an organization works, not just how a team or how a product works. And I think that has stayed with me till now because you can learn the skills, you can learn engineering skills, but you cannot learn customer communication skills until you actually get to work in that environment. So I worked there for about 3 years, and that's when I decided it's time for me to make a change. Um, I have always been resonant with change is the only constant. If you don't change yourself constantly, or if you don't adapt to the change, then probably you will hit a plateau in your career very soon. And I was not ready for that. So I thought of, okay, what's going to be the next move in my life? And I definitely wanted to do masters and get into tech. So I decided to look for opportunities and I wanted to explore the world and not keep myself limited to a specific location or to a specific country. I was lucky enough to get an opportunity to study in the United States. Well, moving was not easy. You change your countries, you change your locations, you leave behind your family, you leave behind your friends, you leave behind your life. You leave behind everything and get to a city where you know no one and you know nothing. Uh, the move was tough, very tough. It took some time to adjust, but I think that has helped me grow personally and professionally to the point that now I can adjust anywhere in the world that I want to. And any change won't be as big for me as it was changing a country entirely. It
Yeah.
helped me shape my personality, it helped me shape my career. Um, the world, I opened myself to a world of endless opportunities. And I think that has really shaped to what I am today, both professionally and personally.
Yeah. And I think that's very important to mention because a lot of times we have these glamorous stories, but we don't actually cover the struggle. Going to even a new city, it's pretty complicated. Even within India, if you're moving states during your undergrad or maybe during your master's or for your job, it's a totally new environment, and especially going abroad to the U.S., where it's definitely different cultural wise, especially the population wise. I think something that everyone notices when they go to the U.S. is that it's not that populated. It can be lonely at times if you don't know anyone, and it's very important to adjust. But like Jasleen had mentioned, she didn't want to plateau in her career, so it is important to pivot at times, whether that is through a master's or a job switch or whatever you're doing, maybe an MBA or something like that, depending upon your career. So that is how Jasleen landed in the US. Okay. So, Jasleen, when did you get to know about generative AI? Because generative AI is something that I think popped a lot after COVID, especially after the invention of ChatGPT, which was around October 2022. For us, it was during our first year of college. So we got a bit of exposure about that early in our careers. But for someone who graduated in 2013, I think that this must be a really new technology that came 6 or 7 years after you're actually working in the industry, and it's like a very transformative technology, so as to speak. Like we can talk about the internet. When the internet came, it was something totally new. There's a boom in that, and the same thing can be said about artificial intelligence and generative AI. So when was the first time you actually got to know about terms such as generative AI or transformers? I think initially in 2017 they had that paper, "Attention is All You Need," which is I think one of the most famous papers, which people still read for folks that are diving into AI. So when was the time when you got to know about generative AI, and you made up your mind that I want to maybe explore this new term or new technology that's coming around?
So I have pivoted my career multiple times. And I when I moved to the United States, I got an admit from software engineering because that was my majors in undergrads in India. I was a software engineer. That's all I knew. That's all I thought I knew. And I thought that's what I wanted to do. So when I got an admit, it was master's in computer science. But when I came here, I saw the world slightly changing. I had no background or experience in data science at all. But one of my professors introduced me to the world of data science. And he told me, why don't you just take one course? Just take Intro to Machine Learning and see how you feel about it. So, following his guidelines, I thought, fine, there's nothing to lose. In the end, I might end up learning something new. Even if I don't use it, that's completely fine. So, I took this course called Introduction to Machine Learning, and I loved it. It was amazing. That was core data science, not generative AI, but that machine learning course gave me insight into technologies and capabilities that I never knew existed. And I just fell in love with that completely. So, with the help of my professor, I pivoted my master's towards data science. So, I started as a data scientist in Dell. I worked as a data scientist for a few years, and my initial work was in research because I loved doing research. It's like you explore something, and then suddenly one day, oh, boom, you've explored something that no one knew existed. So I was always super interested in research. And then when COVID hit, we all started working from home, things pivoted again. We never expected for this huge change to happen.
Correct.
And then coming back, driving out of COVID, we already had seen so much change mentally and physically that I think we were all ready for something new that was going to come up. And that's when everyone started seeing ChatGPT. So it was very new. There was a lot of conversations about, oh, this is going to be a hype. This is just going to be a bubble. This is going to break. It's not going to sustain. It's just there because, people are just coming out of COVID and maybe they want something new. They want to hear something exciting. But somewhere I thought that, no, I don't think that's the right direction. I don't think it's a bubble. Even if it is, we will see once we get there. So I saw a very small team in Dell starting to explore what generative AI is and what the capabilities of Gen AI are. And that's when I decided, okay, it's the right time for me now to pivot my career. I've been working in data science for the last 2 years, and let's try and make a change. So I talked to that team, I talked to the manager, I went through a couple set of interviews, and I started working in generative AI. And I feel that that has been one of the best moves I have ever made in my life because it's like I like software engineering. I started enjoying software engineering. I started enjoying data science, and now I love what I do. So even though the years have passed and my career has changed, it has been in such a positive direction that I'm so excited to wake up every morning and figure out, okay, I am so excited to do this today. There's so much changing. I'm so excited to learn. I'm so excited to build something new. It just keeps me motivated. I have not yet reached a point where, you know, work for me has is just like a job that I start every single day.
Okay. So, what do you do in a day as a forward deployed engineer? Because a lot of people are actually interested if you're in Google Cloud. So, how does a day of a forward deployed engineer actually look like? And what sort of work are you handling? Because it's not a normal role. It's not just software engineering where, you're writing code, you're editing it, you're pushing it, you're having discussions within the team, you're understanding where everyone is. It's not like that. We have an extra communication there where you are actually at the client side. And at the client side, I think things become very different because they're not very technical. A lot of times they don't have a lot of technical knowledge, and what they care about is whether the product that the company is delivering, whether it matches their requirement, if it's a market fit or not. So it would be great to understand that aspect of things. Yeah.
Sure. So, we start by talking to the customers and understanding their problem. And their problem should not be technical. Because if that problem is technical, then the customer has already teased apart a lot of it, and they probably don't need us. So we try to bring the customer back to try to define what your problem statement is. What is it that you're having issues with? Do you think that your marketing team is taking months to do something, and you think that that should be reduced? Or you think your developers are probably taking weeks or months to build a prototype, and you think that that's a place where you feel AI could solve? So we try to talk to the customer on these broader problem statements. We try to pivot the customer on saying whether AI will solve this problem or not. Let's not talk about that in the very beginning.
Correct.
Let us figure this out for you rather than you telling us that I want to reduce my workload or my employee productivity time from, I don't know, 10 weeks to 10 days. Let us help you figure that out on if that can be done, and if, then how that can be done. So we start with a lot of customer communications, trying to understand their problem, trying to understand why they think this is the problem, why they want to solve it, why this problem statement is very important for them, why this is urgent for them. Based on this, we try to guide them in the direction of whether this is an AI problem or not. Because in many cases, this might not be something that AI can do. Because believe it or not, many people still think AI is magic.
Correct.
It's not. It's maths. It's not magic. So we have to tell the customer many times, and it's very disappointing for them, that AI cannot solve this problem. We cannot jump to the moon directly by using AI. That's not how the world works. So we help the customer into understanding what can be done and how much time it's going to take. We understand the customer's working environment so that we can guide the customer to the right toolset.
Yeah.
So if you think about the AI technologies popping up every day, you know, there's a new model, there's a new backend, there's a new front end, there's a new technology. We have anti-gravity, we have Gemini, we have Claude, we have ChatGPT, there's a different front end, there's a different backend. There's just so much out there. It's very difficult for someone to consume everything and be able to create a solution with all of this.
Correct.
That's where we come in. That's where a forward deployed engineer comes in. We understand the customer's problem, and then we try to create a tailored solution for them. So, for example, you go to your stylist and say, I want a dress fit, that's the perfect fit for me, and I'm going to this specific party or this specific venue. This is going to be the weather. This is going to be the day. This is how I look. This is how I want to look. This is what I'm envisioning. Create something for me. And then your stylist comes up with a beautiful dress that's tailored specifically for you and then helps you fit that into your needs. That's what we do. We are the fashion designers of AI industry. We create solutions for customers that's tailor fit for their problem statement and exactly and directly fits what they want and solves their problem. Now that sometimes means telling them, what you've been thinking probably is not possible, or what you've been thinking is not really an AI problem, or you've read it this way. We understand, but we don't think that that's the right solution. Helping and guiding the customer into what's right, what should be done, how it can be done, and then helping them create the how as well. So creating the solution, guiding the customer, creating the architecture, creating the initial POC, creating the final product, and then putting that product in the customer's environment is what forward deployment engineers do.
Yeah, and a very famous example, I think, is the chef example as well. Like you mentioned, the tailor example where you want a custom
Hmm.
tailored dress for a given event. Another one might be a chef, where there's two things. You can either go to a restaurant, they have their own setup, they're cooking food for you, and they're giving it to your table. Or the other approach would be, bring a personal chef, where they can actually come into your environment, see what ingredients you have, and try to cater to your requirements. And I think this role it's pretty important given the fact that MIT had this study, right, where they said that 95% of AI pilots actually fail in production and they aren't able to give any sort of ROI. So I think that's the main issue that the tech world sort of understood, is that if we have an engineer actually at the client side, he would better be able
Hmm.
to build products that actually fit what they need, rather than just sending a sales team or something like that, where the sales team has no technical knowledge and there can be a certain gap that becomes hard to bridge. Okay, so
Hmm.
Jasleen, what skills would you say are most important? If suppose if you can rank them, maybe the top five skills that a forward deployed engineer actually needs in their day to day life, or what interviewers actually look for when they are hiring a forward deployed engineer for their company.
So, if I had to list them out, the first is definitely development experience, or you should know how to code. Now, these days, coding is language agnostic. Earlier in
Correct.
the past, you were like, should I learn Java? Should I learn Python? Should I learn Go? Should I learn JavaScript? Now it's like, do you know how to code? Language agnostic. Having said that, we still code almost always in Python. So if I am looking for an FDE for my team, I would definitely want someone who can code in Python. Having said that, we all are vibe coding today.
Correct.
So you need to know how to use AI to code and not necessarily how to code. How to figure out what changes and edits is AI making, and if that changes and edits is making sense for what you are wanting to do. So that's a very important skill. Secondly, communication. Because we work directly with the customer, sometimes on the customer side, it's important to communicate properly. It's important to communicate effectively. It's important to understand the customer. It's important to be empathetic to the customer. So, communication skill is very important at this field. And then the third thing I would say is wanting to learn and keep yourself updated. So, since there is a new technology coming up almost every day, as a forward deployed engineer, it's very important that you keep track of everything that's coming up new. Now, definitely, there's only so much that you can read or go through, but at least try your best to know the broader technologies that are coming and how that impacts what you're doing. Because let's say you've started building a product and something massive new has come up, and that's a better way to solve the problem that you're currently working on. If you don't know what's going on, there's no way you can pivot the customer in the right direction. And in
Correct.
that case, the customer will come back to you and say, I read about this and I think that might be a better solution. And if you, as an FDE, have never heard about it, there's no way you can help the customer.
Correct.
So that's a third skill that I think is very important for someone who's wanting to get into this role.
Okay. So like Justine had mentioned, just to summarize, the first skill is coding. So she mentioned that you don't have to know how to like write code exactly, but you have to know how to use AI to write code. So you have to have an understanding of what the code is actually doing, versus just typing the code like we normally would without AI. So it's mainly using AI and trying to incorporate that into your code, and making sense of whether AI actually is making the required changes, whether you're going towards your goal or it's making some changes that you don't want it to make. And the second skill she mentioned is communication, because you're at the client side. So definitely you must have a good way in which you articulate your thoughts. Because if you're not able to articulate your thoughts, it will become very hard, given the fact that a lot of times the client won't have a lot of technical knowledge. So it's very important to give them a product sense of what you have developed and how it's going to help them, or how you are going to help them pivot to another solution, which would give a better result. And the third aspect that Jasleen had talked about is the ability to learn and keep on staying updated. Because, like she mentioned, that every day there's a new change, there's a new model, there's a new programming language, there's a new protocol nowadays, there's MCP, there's A2A, and there's something that's coming around the corner every day. So you don't want to be like behind the client in a sense, because the client can also use these AI tools to at least get a basic idea about what the different solutions are. So you have to really stay ahead of them, or else the client wouldn't have a good image of you, in that sense that this guy doesn't even know the latest technology. So why should I even talk with him? I could just use Chat GPT or something like that. And as the models grow stronger, I think it's even more important to do that, because as they grow smarter, I think after one point they might even be better than a human being. We don't know when that's going to happen, but that could happen potentially in the future. So it's very important to stay updated in that sense. So, Jasleen, what would your advice be to someone who is, just entering college or even exiting college? Maybe they're in their last year, because this is a new field and there's a lot of openings that I have personally seen. And as FDEs, now they even have junior for deployed engineers in some places, where they train you from an early part of your career. For example, LTM, they launched their AI initiative where they're planning to hire 1,000 FDEs from their company. So they're basically gonna test what you know, and they're gonna sort of nurture you. Mostly focusing on the young folks out there, they're gonna nurture you and put you into that role. So, what would your advice be to someone who's in college, who's just about to graduate? Like, what should they be doing at this point of time to stay ahead in this AI world, or stay ahead in technology, so as to say, so that they're ready for, ready to pivot at any time, and ready to do well once they enter the job market?
So, if I had to map out a roadmap for building an AI career today for anyone who's wanting to start or is somewhere in a journey, um, I would boil it down to five distinct steps. The first one is fundamentals. Irrespective of where you are, irrespective of what you learned, irrespective of what you want to learn, you still need the bedrock, which means Python or a programming language, basic stats, and then very clean software engineering. Like you need to know how the car works before you try to modify it. The second is learning modern AI. So this is where you dive into the technologies or the details of AI, embeddings, vector databases, AI agents, basically the engineering behind what we call as generative AI today. The third is building projects. And by building projects, I don't mean copying a tutorial or cloning a GitHub project and then running it. By that, I mean building something that scratches a real itch, you know, like
Yeah,
building an AI assistant or a research bot or a multi-agent workflow, building something from scratch entirely and building it yourself.
correct.
As as employers right now or someone who's hiring, we do not really care about someone who has a perfect GPA. Employers today, they want evidence that you can build something that's useful and also staying within a certain limit. By limit, I mean spending limit.
Correct.
You can build something that's super expensive, but then if it's way much more expensive than the ROI that
The
the income
product's
that
gonna
it's
get,
gonna
yeah,
get,
it's not really
there's
lucrative.
no exactly. Okay, so the fourth point is to share your work publicly so that you can get recognized, so that people know you. You know, like for example, put your work on GitHub or write a blog or give a local talk. So, like, I'm a total textbook case for this. Almost every major opportunity in my career came because I put myself out there at conferences or I've written articles. So if you build a brilliant AI solution, let's say isolation, it's like throwing a secret party and forgetting to send the invitations.
Correct.
There are so many people out there, it's very difficult for people to get to know you or reach out to you if they do not know that you exist. In this social media present world, you need to make sure that you are being heard and you are being seen. And the last step that I can say is never stop learning. If you think about AI, it changes almost every day.
Correct.
So being comfortable with continuous learning is not just a bullet point on your resume anymore. It's literally the job description.
Okay. So that was good to hear the 5 points that anyone who wants to dive into this market or pivot really needs to know, whether that's an undergrad or whether that's someone who already has experience. So we've talked a lot about forward deployed engineering. I'd want to know your thoughts about the future of AI, or what you predict that we could see over the next 5 years, and if there's any technology that you feel like will definitely boom over the next 5 years, what would that be?
I think AI is not only going to expand, it's going to change the way we do things. The next big wave of AI is going to be how we use that to solve our everyday problems.
Correct.
For example, we want AI to solve our mundane tasks so that we can focus on creative work. We don't want AI to do our creative work so that I can spend time doing the dishes.
Correct.
So the next big wave of AI is going to be how does it take care of the very stuff that we think is mundane, which might not be mundane. So, for example, cooking, cleaning, doing the dishes, taking care of my everyday work, so
Correct.
that our minds can focus on creating something new. They can actually focus on the creative tasks. So the next big wave of AI, I think, is going to be the combination of AI and robotics and how
Yeah.
these two things will merge together. And we're already seeing that in,
Correct.
self-driving cars,
Correct.
Tesla,
The
Waymo.
Waymo. Yeah.
Hmm.
That's pretty good to hear. I think even with Waymo, the biggest issue they have nowadays is the police officers. They like, suppose Waymo passes through a signal, so a lot of time there's like open the window, but there's no one there, so there's a lot of complications with that as well. But it would be pretty interesting to see how
Hmm.
robotics and AI combined in different fields, like you mentioned, in mundane tasks. Because so far it's been um, more of the LLMs. I think they're more famous rather than the robotics aspect of things. So it would be very cool to see how it works out in different fields as well. So now we're going to go into the rapid fire round. I'll put up a question, whatever comes into your mind, you can answer accordingly. So let's start off with the first thing: one engineering skill every student should master before graduating.
Coding
Okay. Do you prefer to be a generalist or a specialist?
specialist,
System design or algorithms? What do you like better?
system design,
Shipping fast or writing the perfect code?
shipping fast,
AI coding assistants, productivity booster, or do you think they waste more time?
productivity booster.
Most underrated skill in software engineering and most overrated skill in software engineering.
Most underrated skill is learning how to actually write algorithm.
Yeah.
Most overrated skill is mm, being able to write the right code.
Okay. One technical resource you keep coming back to, whether that's related to AI or anything related to software engineering.
Medium. I love reading Medium blogs.
Okay. One concept you wished you had learned a bit earlier.
Uh, Architecture,
Okay.
and I mean software architecture.
Yep. If you had only 1 hour every day to improve yourself, how would you spend that 1 hour?
Reading blogs.
Okay. One habit that has the biggest impact on your career so far, and people should also try to ingrain.
trying to develop something myself on a very regular basis.
Okay. Should people optimize for learning earlier in their career, or they should optimize more for compensation?
Optimize for learning.
One.
Compensation will come on its own.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. One AI tool you generally use every week. That's a big productivity booster.
Anti-gravity.
Okay. One skill you think AI won't be able to replace in the near future, or maybe even
I
in 5 years down the line.
I think any of the creative tasks, cooking specifically according to my taste.
Okay. What's one AI hype that you don't agree with at all, or you feel like it's just a hype? It's not actually something that can be done with AI.
Uh, I think what cannot be done with AI? Probably any of the creative stuff cannot be done with AI.
Okay. One career decision you're happiest you made.
Moving into Gen AI.
Okay. One mistake that taught you the most, and what did you learn from that mistake?
Um, hmm. Starting very earlier into a big corporation and running after money and not running after the experience or learning.
Okay.
And I figured it out within the first 6 months. It was not a good option.
Yeah, and it was a good pivot, as you mentioned, with when you moved to the US and you
Yes.
got more exposure into different fields. One piece of advice you would give your 18-year-old self.
Follow your passions and try to figure out your passion as early as you can in your
Okay.
life.
One belief about the corporate world, or one belief in general that completely changed once you exited college.
I used to think corporate world is perfect and they have everything figured out, but everyone's still figuring everything on an everyday basis.
Okay. What is success for you in one sentence?
Waking up excited and happy every morning.
Okay. And to end things off, what is one quote you live by, or one philosophy that you live by on a daily basis?
Change is the only constant.
Okay. So thank you so much, Justin. It was great talking with you. I think we dived a lot into forward deployed engineering. It was very good to hear personally on my end as well from someone who has experience in the field, so that I can also improve and try to grab those roles. And I think we covered a lot, especially for students out there, and even for folks that have experience. Hopefully, they can use this podcast to start off at as a base and pivot in their careers. Like you mentioned, you pivot a lot of times. It would be great to see a lot of people pivot like that. And just as we end the podcast, if you have any message you'd like to tell the world, or you like to tell anyone watching this podcast.
I would say keep learning. The day learning stops, that's when your career stops. So, whether you're learning something new, it's learning a new skill, might be related to your job, might not be related to your job, just learn. Learn something every day, every week. If it's not every day, make sure you're learning something new every week.
Okay, so I think that's the perfect note to end on. And once again, thank you so much for sparing some time for the podcast. It was really good. I personally learned a lot, and I think the audience will definitely gain a lot from this. So thank you once again, and all the best
Thank
for
you
your
so
future at
much.
Google. Yep.
Thank you.